Right now, from Pittsburgh's Action News 4, Commitment 2016, and the Democratic race for Pennsylvania Senate. Three major candidates.
I don't look like a typical politician.
Debating the issues important to you.
We need to start with an agenda that's about investing in people and education and health care.
They say their experience deserves your vote.
I'm running for the United States Senate because it's a very dangerous world out there.
Three messages, three candidates, face to face tonight. Now, here is your host, Sally Wiggin.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us on WTAE. Also, welcome to our viewers across the state and watching our live stream on WTAE.com. Pennsylvania's primary election is now just weeks away. And tonight, we, along with the Pennsylvania League of Women Voters, welcome the Democratic candidates for U.S. Senate. Joining us are former Chief of Staff for Governor Tom Wolf, Katie McGinty, former Pennsylvania Congressman Joe Sestak, and the current mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, John Fetterman. Also joining us tonight are panelists: Chris Potter from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Elaine Effort from KQV News Radio, Bob Mayo from Pittsburgh's Action News 4, and Susan Carty, president of the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania, our partner for tonight's debate. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question. At the conclusion, each candidate will wrap with a 1 minute closing statement. Any rebuttals will be solely at my discretion. Tonight's order was predetermined by drawing numbers, and Mr. Fetterman, you are going first, and I have the first question.
Very good.
The three of you will probably admit you have quite similar stances on a number of issues. Please describe what makes you different and how those differences will enable you to best represent the people of Pennsylvania in the Senate. Mr. Fetterman.
Sure. Well, Sally, I just got to say that as a Pittsburgher, I'm living the dream being on a news stage with the legendary Sally Wiggin. And the way, if you look at our differences, I would say the main one is biographical. I have been the mayor of one of the poorest, most challenged communities in the Commonwealth for the last 11 years, and I have taken on issues that are at the forefront of the Democratic debate that we are having as a party. That goes for adult education, that goes for universal pre-K. We have one of the finest pre-K programs in the entire state. The war on drugs, gun control, gun violence. We've exercised leadership in all of these areas. Immigration. LGBT rights. I officiated the first same-sex wedding in Pennsylvania when it was still illegal under the threat of Governor Corbett. When you look for the differences in all three of us, you look to the biography and look to the commitment to service, and I want to be a champion for all of Pennsylvania's cities, just like the way I've been for the champion of Braddock for the last 11.
Ms. McGinty.
Well, thank you, and thanks to everybody for gathering us here this evening. This is an important election. I'm Katie McGinty, and I'm running to have the back of working families in this Commonwealth and across the country. When I was Secretary of Environmental Protection, I was proud to bring good manufacturing jobs to this state. That tangible experience of how you create good family-sustaining jobs, how we stand up to bad trade deals, how we make sure we're putting our men and women back to work is firsthand experience that I bring. At a time when Congress seems to be so out of touch with the realities of working families, I also bring the perspective of a working mother. I think that's a perspective that's sorely lacking when we are not investing in education, when we're turning a blind eye to the incredible burden of college debt. Those are challenges that I will take on, and I am proud to say, as President Obama acknowledged last week in endorsing me, that I am a champion for those working families.
Thank you. Mr. Sestak.
Thanks, Sally. I'm Joe Sestak, and I most want to bring integrity of service. I was in high school, Vietnam War was ongoing, so I joined up. I loved the Navy. I didn't think I'd stay that long. I got to be on the ground in Afghanistan, head of the Navy's anti-terrorism unit, commander carrier battle group in the war, served President Clinton as director of defense policy. But then I didn't get married when I was 47, couldn't convince anyone. Finally had this beautiful woman marry me. And my daughter, when she was 4 years old, after I came back from 12 months at the war, had brain cancer. Only 8% of kids have survived. You gave me health care in the military that saved her. I got out of the Navy, took care of her, and then came home to my district, a Republican district, became the second Democrat since the Civil War in 2006 to work for universal health care for everyone. Went to Congress, became the most productive congressman I was called. And then when I narrowly lost the Senate race, I turned down those lucrative lobbying jobs and went to teach. And now I just want to serve people. It doesn't matter who endorses me, except if it's people. Thank you.
Now, Susan Carty, a question for Ms. McGinty.
Ms. McGinty, the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration has held hearings on the impact of high levels of immigration on U.S. workers. What is your assessment of the impact of immigration on job opportunities in the United States?
Well, I think we have to remember that we are a nation of immigrants. I'm second generation in this country, and I know that when my grandparents came from Ireland, they gave their all for this country, helped see us through the Great Depression. I also seen headlines recently where 50% of all of our new businesses that are making more than $1 billion were started by immigrants. So we are a country that welcomes that talent, and I would be for comprehensive immigration reform so that we could capitalize on that talent. But I'll tell you, our workforce is second to none. And I would step up and invest in job training and apprenticeship programs so that it is our workforce that is getting the jobs to build the infrastructure of today and tomorrow. You see the tragedy that unfolded in Philadelphia, 2 lives lost as another train ran off the rails. We can put our people to work, we can build a strong and growing economy, and immigration and immigrants will be part of that vibrancy.
Mr. Sestak.
How can we not embrace one of the brightest threads of the fabric of America, immigration? You know, when I was down there in Congress, I fought hard for bipartisanship in trying to resolve this issue of let's bring our immigrants who are in here undocumented out of the shadow. Let them get in line and become citizens. Why? Yeah, my father was an immigrant, 8 kids. Sit at the table and said, penny for college, penny for food. And all of us went on to college and beyond. And yet, we know that if these undocumented come out of the shadows, we will have increased productivity in our nation of $1.2 trillion. We will resolve a lot of problems with Social Security and Medicare in the insolvency that is down the road, because both of us will receive over $600 billion from the hard work. I have yet to meet anyone who's an immigrant that doesn't want to be all they can be. In fact, 40% of our Fortune 500 companies are headed by an immigrant or first generation. Let's just do it.
Mr. Fetterman.
First of all, I would just like to say that the rhetoric from the other side of the aisle has just been, against immigration, has just been profoundly disappointing and shocking and divisive. My own story with immigration is that my lovely wife, Giselle, was brought to this country when she was 9 by her mother from Brazil. And they were fleeing a dangerous and unstable situation. And they came to this country just looking for what all of us want, the American dream, a better chance, something to hold on to and a way to make a better lives for themselves. And that's really the immigrant story for most people coming into this country. The idea that they're murderers or drug dealers or rapists, all this horrible Trump rhetoric is like, we all came from a boat somewhere. Immigration is what made this country great, and immigration is what continues to help make this country grow. I'm pro-immigration, and I wouldn't have the lovely family that I do were it not for immigration.
Candidates, we're going to do something a little different now. And everybody's going, oh, no, actually.
Right.
This is going to be fun. In this next round, the panelists will ask a question specifically tailored to each of you, and only you will answer that question. So first, Bob Mayo for Mr. Sestak.
You're targeted in an attack ad right now that questions your commitment to Social Security and to Medicare. It notes that you once supported a budget plan in 2010 that would have cut the deficit in part by trimming those programs. Are there any changes in Social Security and Medicare now that you think are fair game?
Bob, the candidate up here who has that false hood out there doesn't know that I voted 41 times, 41, to advance, enhance, protect Social Security. In fact, I've been on television shows, I've been on radio shows saying protect Social Security. And in my book, having taught rather than become a lobbyist like some, what I did instead is went to research how to fix it. My doctorate's in political economy. You're right. We have to resolve this issue. But what I said for Social Security was, if you look at the great Tip O'Neill, Ronald Reagan compromise in '83, they covered a lot of the wages. But now those wages gone to the top 1%. And in my book, I say, that's where the money is to resolve Social Security solvency in 2030. And Medicare, it was my fight for the Affordable Care Act, where Medicare would run out of money next year, that now has solvency until 2030 because of the fight we did for the people of America down there. I love the Tea Party town halls to defend Social Security and Medicare. And I'll take another 41 votes for it.
All right, Mr. Sestak. Now we go to Elaine Effort from Mr. Fetterman.
Mr. Fetterman, you've been described as an unorthodox, atypical politician who confronts disparity and inequality. But Pennsylvania has been described as Pittsburgh on one end, Philadelphia on the other, with Alabama in between. How do you appeal to the state's voters in the state's midsection and upper tier? How do you do it?
Sure. Well, your description, the famous James Carville quote. I actually grew up in York, Pennsylvania, and that's very much a part of that big red T. So I like to joke on the campaign trail that I hope I'm the first Democrat that my family votes for. I'm the only Democrat in my family, in fact. So I grew up in a conservative household, and I really understand that region of the state. And we may not agree on everything politically, but the folks there respect and appreciate, because a lot of them live in forgotten communities whose best days were a generation ago, and that's who I'm championing for. And I get contacted all the time by people on social media saying, look, I may not agree with everything, but I'm actually switching my registration just to vote for you because I really respect your integrity and your commitment to service for a lot of these Pennsylvania cities that many of these people in that part of the state live in, grew up in, or still have relatives living in.
Chris Potter for Ms. McGinty.
Ms. McGinty, as you probably know, Republicans have attacked you for doing private sector work for the energy industry, including firms you once regulated as the Secretary of the Department of Environmental Protection. Those attacks, I suspect, are only going to step up in the general, and I think we may have heard an allusion made to them just a few minutes ago. What do you want voters to know who hear about these suggestions or allegations and are concerned about allegations of revolving door politics?
Well, I think two things, Chris. First, I do think it is important in a job as responsible and important as these jobs are that you have real world experience. And I'm proud I'm not just a creature of government. I've been out there making payroll, running businesses. But there's a reason that the League of Conservation Voters, Environmental Defense Action Fund, Oceans Champions, in fact, every environmental organization involved in this election has endorsed me. And that is because I have dedicated my entire professional career to protecting the environment and also shattering that myth that if you are for jobs, you're against the environment, and if you're for the environment, you're against jobs. We can and we have done better. I do want to say, though, one part of having a good job is earning a secure retirement. And I do disagree with Congressman Sestak. He has said that it was courage and the proper thing to do to call for the Social Security retirement age to be lifted to 69 and significantly cut benefits. My parents retired on Social Security. We couldn't have made it without it. That's the wrong choice and wrong
Ms.
for working
McGinty.
families.
Thank you very much. All right, now we have some questions for you from our followers on Facebook and Twitter. This is from Twitter from Emily B. How do you propose to stem the brain drain in rural Pennsylvania? This questioner says, we need better education in our rural areas too. And that goes to you first, Mr. Sestak.
Yes, between 2011 and 2014, I did over 800 events for others, mainly Democrats, but I also did rural development events, almost 2/3 of them in the rural counties. Butler County 12 times, Elk County 8 times. What we first have to do is fix the infrastructure. I will take my iPhone and hold it up there, and you can't use it in Elk County in places. How do we expect the youth to be there, or the dairy farmers to survive when they're unable to get on and find the immediate market price up there at the Chicago Mercantile Place? And second, we have to get more community colleges. That's where we really move forward, because we only have 5% of the community colleges. 5% of colleges, community colleges, and what we really need is, like the rest of the nation, 25%, so you get that first step. And Katie, you're wrong. And here's why. She should remember, as I do as a Catholic, the 8th commandment. I never, ever advocated, in fact, have gone on radio and television, that actually we should never raise, never, the age of our seniors to retire.
I'm going to give Ms. McGinty a chance to rebut that.
Well, thank you. And, you know, I just have to say, Congressman, not a couple of months ago at the press club, you really were quite impassioned about how taking on those, as you called them, entitlements, was the courageous thing to do. And the proper thing to do was to adopt those cuts to Social Security that have been proposed in a budget deal that many Tea Party Republicans rallied around. Those were your words. That was your speech. And you've spoken repeatedly about the need to take on entitlements. I'll tell you, Congressman, my dad walked the beat for 35 years. He earned his Social Security. It's not an entitlement.
You can address it, Mr. Sestak, in our closing statements. We need to move on to Mr. Fetterman.
But I never said those words. That's not the truth, Miss Sally.
Thank you, Mr. Sestak.
All right.
Mr. Fetterman, do I need to repeat the question?
Yeah, you want to? Yeah.
Yeah, I will. Because we got off track a little bit, but that's good. How do you propose to stem the brain drain in rural Pennsylvania? We need better education for our rural kids, too.
Sure. Well, again, I familiar with the rural areas in Pennsylvania, and at the end of the day, the needs of the rural communities are very similar to communities like mine, in fact. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why one of my top priorities, if I'm your next United Senator, would be to push for universal pre-K and to make sure that the children growing up in rural areas are receiving the finest pre-K services that are available in this state and in this country. Second, we need to fix the funding formula, and we need to make sure that we are educating our children at the best high schools possible and the best schools possible in that part of the state. And currently, we are not doing that. Those districts, whether it's rural or like mine, are not receiving the resources that they need. And thirdly, again, as I agree with Mr. Sestak, we need to invest in the infrastructure and make sure that we are diverting the appropriate level of resources to make those communities a compelling place to live and work and raise your own family.
Ms. McGinty.
Thank you. Well, you know, your zip code should have nothing to do with your promise and prospect for the future. And it all does start with education. I was proud to work with Governor Wolf and break through what had been a logjam in coming up with a funding formula that would fairly fund every school district in this Commonwealth. I will say another job that we have to do is to put a spotlight on the incredible businesses and innovation we have in rural Pennsylvania. I remember when I was Secretary of Environmental Protection, traveling to Elk County and other areas in the central part of the state, giving awards to businesses that were so far ahead of the curve. Powdered metal businesses in St. Mary's, Elk County, for example, that had met and exceeded every environmental regulation and were then leading the market in selling component parts to U.S. manufacturers and globally. Look, we ought to invest in our businesses, and when there's a contract to be had, rural Pennsylvania should have a great shot at it.
All right, thank you, Ms. McGinty. All right, now a question from Susan Carty for Mr. Fetterman.
Mr. Fetterman, reports tell us that federal and state prisons and county jails throughout the United States have become warehouses for the poor, the mentally ill, and those suffering from addiction. In your opinion, how do we as a country begin to address and correct this problem?
Sure. Well, I think of the three people that are on the stage, nobody has a greater experience in that area, given from the community of which I'm proud to represent. You know, the school to prison pipeline is a national disgrace. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I am responsible directly or indirectly for nearly 1,000 young people earning their GEDs. And I'm also a strong proponent of universal pre-K. Black Lives Matter when it comes to the prison to school pipeline. And this nation's war on drugs, nobody knows more than the mayor of a small town in charge of a police force what that has done. We need to legalize marijuana. We need to reform policing, as I have done in Braddock, in creating an effective community policing model that drove down crime. And we went 5.5 years without a murder in our community, while at the same time, without going through any kind of complaints or major issues with the community. Nobody on this stage understands better how poverty and the cycle and the mass incarceration has helped decimate communities of color like mine. We need to break that system, and we also need to remove any kind of privatized prisons in this state.
Ms. McGinty.
Well, when we are a Commonwealth, as we are, that is now spending more on corrections than we are on college, something is very definitely wrong. I'd like to take a thorough look at criminal justice reform, looking at nonviolent offenses in particular, looking at those mandatory minimums, the 3 strikes and you're out type of policies that have driven so many young people into jail, that have broken up so many families. I think we also need to decriminalize marijuana. It really is a telling thing that a young person with a little pot in his pocket winds up in jail when the CEOs on Wall Street that collapsed our economy all walked free. That's not right either. We have to welcome our returning citizens from prison as well. Job training, apprenticeship programs, and making sure people have a real shot at being able to provide for themselves and their children.
Mr. Sestak.
Thank you. This is something I've lived with since I joined up during the Vietnam era. It used to be the era where people said, or the judge would, jail or the Navy. I lived with them. I went to war with them, and they were mighty fine, those that avoided jail. But it's also why, as a congressman, I went to a prison every year on Veterans Day and often Armed Services Day, because we really have to fix the recidivism programs of those who come out. I made a speech here a few years ago about why we don't have evidence-based recidivism program. And I studied at Carnegie Mellon, why has the incarceration rate of women gone up 80% the last 10 years, and what do we do about it? But you have to put yourself where you speak. The 3rd person I hired on my campaign staff was a young man, African-American, incarcerated for quite a few years, a number too many. If he had not had, as Katie and others have pointed out, those wrong, inane laws, there you go. But he came and was on my staff, was wonderful. But we need the right recidivism program. In the Affordable Care Act, we have the proper enforcement of drug and alcohol parity with medical and surgical.
All right,
and we
thank
must
you very
enforce
much, Mr.
that.
Sestak. Thank you. All right, I have a follow-up question. Mr. Fetterman, you had mentioned the term Black Lives Matter. I would like to ask each of you what that term means to you, and I'm going to do it. You get 30 seconds for this, and I'm going to ask you in the same order that question was. Mr. Fetterman, what does that mean?
Sure. What Black Lives means to me is my way of life and what I have done with my professional career for the last 20 years. 20 years ago, I was teaching GED classes at the Hill House to young African American parents. In 2001, I came to Braddock, Pennsylvania, a community that's 80% African American, and I took on the challenges. We in this country, you can't just say it, you have to live it, and I'm the only candidate on this stage that has actually lived it. And it goes beyond words, and it goes beyond anything like a hashtag. It's a commitment that I've exercised every day for the last 11 years.
Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. Ms. McGinty.
Well, to me, what it means fundamentally is recognizing the dignity of every single person. I feel uplifted when I recognize the truth that, yes, Black Lives Matter. But shame on us if it's just that slogan. To me, what it means also is standing with a single mother, as I did a number of months ago, who's working not 1, but 2 minimum wage jobs, has a 5-year-old son. It's about recognizing her dignity, paying her a decent wage, equal pay for equal work, so that she can do what she wants to do, which is to take care of and raise her son as well.
Mr. Sestak.
In the military, when I joined up, we used to have race riots, and we worked ourselves through that with the commander of all our forces, Colin Powell, black, became commander. Do Black Lives Matter? They do to all of us, absolutely. Half the children under 3 years old are children of color. In 15 years, they'll be our largest national asset in numbers. If they aren't in quality of education and health care, we, America, don't make it. And that's why these lives matter. Half the children in pre-K who are kicked out are actually those who are of color. And half of those put in restraints under IEAD are of color. We have a systematic problem we must fix.
Thank you very much. Our next question from Bob Mayo to Ms. McGinty.
The clash between the FBI and Apple raises this bigger question. Should the government have the power to compel any private company or person basically to commandeer their talent team to break encryption and digital privacy? Should it have the power to force a company to create backdoors to privacy software that doesn't exist?
Bob, what I'd say is we have 2 incredibly important values at stake here. One is our national security and the security of the people of the United States, and the other is the privacy of every person in the United States, a key foundational principle of this country. You know, I was a chemist. I've worked a lot in and around technology. And I guess I'm hard pressed to think that it's such an either or equation. I believe we can do better bringing the authorities together with technology experts and find a way forward that neither compromises our national security nor our privacy. I think the resolution that seems to have unfolded here in the Apple case maybe points us at least in one direction where that seemed to be possible. But I do think in this case in particular, this wasn't just anybody's iPhone. This was a known killer, a terrorist. This wasn't just a suspected, maybe it was his phone or not. I did think it was essential to come to a resolution and essential that that data be provided in this case.
But can they compel a company to create tools that aren't there that could open the door to other people's privacy?
Well, as I am suggesting here, first of all, I think we have had cooperation where the technology companies have stepped forward. Apple some 70 times, Google some 30, 40 times. I think if we can dial down some of the rhetoric, I think if people can sit at the table, there are ways to work this out that are both enhancing and securing of our privacy as well as ensuring our national security.
Mr. Sestak.
Yes, I walked out of the Pentagon shortly before the plane crashed in. I came back and I looked down and I couldn't get in, but two of my men who had once worked for me never came out. Then I became head of the Navy's anti-terrorism unit, took a slide, gave it to the chief naval officer, took it to Mr. Rumsfeld, and said this global war of terror will begin and end probably at least over a decade, and that the new domain of cyberspace is the new domain of warfare. I advocated cutting the number of ships. I wrote an article even in the Post-Gazette here. We're building a Navy, a military that has to dominate the cyberspace area. Can we balance that with our rights, our civil rights? Absolutely. And with proprietary rights of our companies? Absolutely. In this case with Apple, I believe President Obama was correct. But I also believe it should have gone to a court just to make sure the court adjudicated it. We have to take that FISA court and then put a third party there to make sure we don't overdo it with our secure civil rights of our people. But to have someone using cyberspace to harm us, no, we must make sure that we can properly go in there like the president wanted.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sestak. Mr. Fetterman?
Yeah, that's a false choice, and there are two non-answers there. At the end of the day, I side with Apple on that idea that they do not and should not provide a one back door which opens up the theoretical door to every iPhone. And in fact, ironically, the problem was actually solved by hackers. So you can bet that Apple's next iPhone is going to be, you can't break its encryption. And I think that's essential for privacy. I think that's essential for free speech. And I think that's essential for all across the world when you have evil regimes that are looking to oppress their citizens. And again, I believe that the iPhone is almost an extension of yourself, and it won't be long before there's a technology to kind of hack the human mind. And I think we're on a very slippery slope there. So I would have sided with Apple in that particular instance.
Elaine Effort, Mr. Sestak.
Mr. Sestak.
Hi.
This week, California and New York began raising their minimum wage to $15 an hour. The federal minimum wage, as you know, is $7.25 an hour and hasn't been changed since 2009. Would you champion an increase in the federal minimum wage, and if so, by what amount?
Absolutely. When I went to Congress, one of the very first votes I took, Elaine, was for raising that minimum wage $1.40 to that $7.25 that you just mentioned. And in fact, again, in the book that lays out why I would never raise the wage in Social Security, what also is in that book is actually that a minimum wage has to raise immediately to $10.80, because every study has demonstrated that if you don't raise the minimum wage above the average hourly wage, you don't lose jobs. In fact, New Jersey raised their wages to that amount. Pennsylvania did it a few years ago. Coterminous county borders, or state borders, no jobs were more lost on the New Jersey side. Then put it right next to, index it to inflation, and then keep raising it up to that $15 level. In that stepped way that we also did it for that $7.25 was a three-step level. Why? 2/3 of the people on minimum wage are women, and they're adults, and 2/3 of them are working moms, and they're single breadwinners. We have to do this.
Mr. Fetterman.
Sure. Well, I want to be able to tell you, and it's the truth, that I'm the only person on this panel that has always consistently championed $15 an hour. When Ms. McGuinty ran for governor a year and a half ago, she championed and ran on the platform of $9 an hour minimum wage. And you would have to ask, well, what's changed since then? And I would want to take her at her word, but the cynic in me would suggest that it probably polls better in 2016 than it did in 2014. And I know better than anybody, as the mayor of a poor community, how much of a difference that job makes. And when you're making $15 an hour, look, that's a floor. That's not the ceiling here. I met with a man who cleans hotel rooms in Erie as a union member for $7.75 an hour. And he takes home every 2 weeks $357.93 for 80 hours worth of work. That isn't a paycheck. That is slavery with tipping. We cannot in this country allow people to work for anything less than $15 an hour, and I will always champion that.
Ms. McGuinty, I don't have to offer you a rebuttal because you're up next.
Thank you. Well, I was very proud in the governor's race to be the first to come out for an increase in the minimum wage, and I was very proud in this race as well to do the same. It's part of the reason why those who are on the front lines of the fight for 15 have endorsed me in this race. And look, it's really about human lives, it's about families, and it's about our economy. And I guess I want to break through a myth right here and now that we would kill jobs if we pay people a decent wage. The opposite is true. 70% of our economy is consumer purchasing power. Put more money in people's pockets will grow the economy. Every state that has raised the minimum wage proves that time and time again.